time it is?
It is.
It's time for Hollow Weekly. Welcome, everybody. We're the hosts. Nick Rollins here with...
The easily gullible George Healy.
He did not see that intro coming. And this week's episode is titled Scary Meeting You Here, which we were deciding for the title, and we decided how would the Crypt Keeper say some sort of, phrase or something like that. So
yeah, that was the
logic.
like my go-to is
fancy meeting you
is
here.
the Crypt Keeper going to say it?
No, scary meeting you here. In his cool ass voice.
That's perfect.
So tell us what we're going to talk about.
We are going to flip the usual script a bit. We see a lot of stuff. We get a lot of feedback from our followers online about how much things suck now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Like horror's gotten worse, nothing scary anymore, blah, blah. So
people are tough.
Yeah,
It scares them.
Right. So we wanted to dig deep and come up with some things that we had kind of the same reaction to at first, that we absolutely hated at first.
Yeah.
And have come to admire and respect and enjoy after a second or third bite at the apple.
Great. So let's start off. I'll go because I have a few. I normally have like my show notes with me and I'm writing it down, but this is all up here today. I want to run off the old muscle memory. So
that way.
Exactly. So I know the first one that I did not like when I was younger was the Blair Witch Project. I remember I was in like elementary school at the time, and yeah, I didn't fall for like the internet hype because I was too young. So like I wasn't on board of like, wait a minute, is this really happening? Like I just knew it as like that movie with the really shaky camera with the kids in the woods. And I think it also came at a really unfortunate time for me because I remember that's when like Scary Movie came out and they parodied it, and then everyone and their fucking mom did a parody of the girl, I'm so scared, like the snot running down her nose.
Totally.
So I think, and I just remember at the time being like, that's not scary, because I didn't know about the ending.
Okay, wait, back up. When did you see it first?
I saw it when, it was a little while after it came out. So I saw the advertisements for it and all that shit, and then a while later I had watched it, and I remember thinking like, how the fuck is this scary? It's just people walking through, because I wasn't like really putting all of the pieces together.
So this is not at a theater. This is home?
This is at home.
Okay.
This is at home. And I just remember thinking like, this is fucking boring. Who likes this shit? I didn't know about all the hype at like where, the film festivals that played out where people were like, holy fucking shit. This is good. So I just watched it at home, and I just remember like, I'm used to like monsters. I'm used to like, show me the fucking thing in the woods, in the basement, under the bed, like show me the fucking monster that's terrifying me. Right. And then I'll be scared. But just the fact that it was like, I didn't really understand like how, because in my head I kept thinking like, how the fuck are these guys getting lost in the woods? I just remember,
right?
Because I didn't grow up in like, I grew up in like in Springfield, Ohio, where there's no like big wooded like areas. So like I've never been into like a huge fucking like woods area where like that could happen.
Right.
So to me it was like, yeah, it's only like a few acres. Like go hit one direction, you'll hit a road. So I never understood like how actual fucked they were and the thing, and I didn't really understand like the legend behind it. So when I'd watched it, I was like, nah, this is just some bullshit. I didn't.
Did it get hyped to you by friends, people you knew?
So when I had watched it with the first time, I knew nothing about it. I knew a little bit about it because I saw all the shit before and the parodies of it. And it wasn't really like hyped. It was more like, I like horror films. Let me watch this. Boo, this fucking sucks. So like that was my first gut reaction, is boo, this sucks. And Alex still thinks the movie sucks today.
Right.
Which I don't. Because I'm a fan, I'm a sucker, and now being older and like looking at the history of it, like seeing like how people thought it was real. Like I love that when people like based off a true story, like that kind of shit. Like how Cloverfield did like their viral campaign. Fucking love that. How Paranormal did their online campaign. Fucking love that. So knowing like they were like some of like the first dudes to do that. I love it. So when I first watched it, fucking hated it. I was like, this is stupid. You don't even see a monster. not scared. Go forward.
Right?
I had watched this on 2 separate occasions since then.
Wait, pause. The first time you saw it, when you weren't scared by it, that famous end moment that scares everyone, you were just like, whatever.
Yeah, I didn't give a shit because before I wasn't piecing together the whole legend of like.
So you saw it, you remember seeing it, and you were just like, whatever.
I was like,
Okay.
who cares?
Perfect.
Freddy Krueger, that's a scary motherfucker. He comes
This
after
is a
you.
guy in the corner, right?
Yeah, this is the guy in the corner, and I was a real big like monster head. Like I just loved like that kind of shit. So like this just didn't do it for me. Sort of how like It Follows, I wasn't a huge fan of, even though you did get to see like some weird naked people like chasing people. I think it was along the same lines of that. Like, I know, show me the fucker,
Right.
you know, scare the shit out of me. So, and I think that like when you're young, you don't piece together like all the important dialogue in a film,
Right.
you know?
Right.
Which
For
is
sure.
all that movie is them going through the woods talking about it, and then all this shit happens. So I think that's probably partially to blame as to why I didn't find it scary then. So then me and my boy Cody, we were in high school, because by then I remember that's when me and my friends really got real into horror. Like I remember like our paper printed off like a 2-page or like a 1-page like spread about like cabin fever coming out. So like it was around that time when we like started to really like dive into horror, read about it, learn about directors and makeup artists and you know all that shit. And so then and also like this podcast seems to always revolve around Bravo's 100 greatest horror movie moments. So
Right.
so me and my friend Cody were like, we had just gotten, I think my family had just gotten like cable again. Like we went off it for a while, like the basic cable, and then all of a sudden when you get cable again, you're like, oh shit, we can watch anything. And like the DVR came out, and we watched The Blair Witch, and then that famous ending scene came out. We were terrified, right? It worked, completely fucking worked on me this time. Scared the shit out of me. And I remember like, because me and Cody and my friend Terry at the time, like we would watch all these horror movies. Fine, right? We watched The Blair Witch Project in our living room, the lights out, movie ends. And I remember I look at Cody, I'm like, just trying to act cool. And I'm like, yo, dude, can you go turn on the lights? And he looks at me and he goes, no, you go turn on the lights. I'm like, fuck.
Right.
So then it totally fucking worked.
Right.
And then I'd watched it a few years ago. Alex started watching it, and that's when she realized she didn't like it. And then I remember, I think I'd watched the rest of it at my computer, and like it still like gave me chills. I'm like, oh fuck, because like how frustrated they get with each other in the woods, and then just like when that camera drops and you see the dude in the corner, the girl screaming, that instantly gives me chills. So that's one movie that I did not like when I was younger. Terrified me when I was older. The fact that like two of us dudes in high school were like, "Can you go turn on the lights?" No, you go turn on the lights.
No,
Fuck you.
Right. Totally got under your skin.
I think it worked.
Yeah, I think you're right. Do you remember things that you picked up from like the quiet, quote unquote, boring parts of the movie?
I just remember the figure that were made of sticks. And that was the other thing. I remember being young and seeing that, and we would like go in the backyard and play, and like we would make that same figure and be like, "Look, the witch is here." But like it had no effect on us because we just knew like that was like some horror, symbol at the time.
Right. It was generic. At
Yeah,
that
yeah.
point.
So to us, it was just like, "Oh, look, the witch is here." And like we'd be like, I get it, Blair Witch. Yeah, I'm not scared. Fuck off.
Right.
But then in high school it worked, and I also think the scary movie era of like everyone and their mom parodying like the handheld POV shit kind of
Totally
put a damper on it, because once everything gets run into the ground parodies, it loses its touch until that air clears, and then you go back into it,
right,
and then it scares the shit out of you.
Right.
So that one I think was probably like the first one. I remember actually being surprised by like how good I thought it was, and I still think it is. I just the fact that they always talk about like how that movie was made for like fucking like candy bar budget.
Right, totally. It's so funny you say that, because the movie that I'm going to talk about next is going to make Blair Witch look big budget, which is weird that we both went the same, because we don't tell each other beforehand. Like,
no.
Right. But that's super cool that you're right. Did you see the sequel?
No. I didn't. I don't think I really gave too much of a shit to do it. There is a guy though who his YouTube channel is Good Bad Flicks, and he did a series. I think it's called his Exploring series, where he talks about like films I could shit on, but he's like, there's actually good stuff in there. He talks about like the diamond and the pile of shit, and the season of the witch. I think is what Blair Witch 2 season.
Blair Witch 2. No, it's like Book of Secrets or something.
Book of Secrets or something like that. Anyways, he talks about that film, and it had potential to be really good, but it was one of those films that got like fucked over by producers. They're like, no, put in this like really hip new metal song in the beginning over the title sequence,
right?
And then do all this other shit. So I don't know. Did you see it? Did you?
I didn't see it, and so this fascinates me because, most of the people that I know that were crazy impressed by Blair Witch, they happen to be people who like caught it at release time.
Yeah.
And it was the marketing that blew them away than the movie.
Yeah.
Right. So you came to it in that like that low point in the chart where the marketing was having no effect on you.
Yeah.
Matter of fact, it was reverse because
by then everyone.
Right, but it's so successful it was being parodied. So like you came to it from almost like the reverse angle. Like, this is ridiculous. You expected it to be like, I'm going to watch someone stick their face in a camera and cry and snot come out of their nose and what the hell, right? Like, I mean, you literally came to it the opposite angle of most of the people I talked to about it, right?
Yeah.
And I feel like half the people I talked to about Blair Witch, the impression I get from them is, if they'd come to it blind without marketing, they wouldn't have found it as scary as they did. It was the marketing that primed them for that, right? So I can't tell what your situation means because like you came to it without marketing and didn't like it. And then just the movie on its own, impressed you and scared you.
Weird, huh?
And then you appreciated the marketing afterwards. You're like, as a horror fan, like I love what they pulled off.
Yeah.
Like you did it literally backwards.
Somehow it worked. Luckily.
Right, totally. But it's interesting to think of like the fact that the movie won with you anyway, without the marketing push behind it, because that wasn't my experience from dealing with people. And it's also interesting to me that like, there's a really strong, great handshake between the concept of the marketing, which was based on true events, and the gritty way it's shot.
Yeah.
Like, at the time it looked like this is how
like
you would shoot it if
it
was shot. Right. So like those two things made sense with each other. Right. And they don't now. Right.
No, it doesn't.
right.
A lot of that stuff doesn't really
like we're not going to fall for that now, right? You'd have to trick us some other way. So you came to it from a different angle, and it impresses you and scares you just on its own, which I think is just like all the more credit to the actual movie itself, which is cool.
And I could probably watch that ending scene again and still like get the heebie-jeebies
right
from it.
So I mean, just weird like side note is I remember the ending scene really, really unnerving me when I saw it. So there's just a couple interesting parts that like things that fascinate me about how people watch things. You watched it at home, which meant you probably had control. You could pause it,
fast
leave,
forward,
right, etc. Like I saw it in the theater, so there's no stopping it. Like you got to just go with it, and then whatever you miss, you got to like be like, I'm gonna go watch it again and see.
And then connect everything. Yeah.
But I feel like it's scarier. A movie like that is probably scarier when you have to dive in and you don't have control where it starts and stops.
Yeah.
Right? So like it fascinates me how people experience things like that because you were in remote control.
Yeah, I could have just fast forwarded through all the talking and blah
but
blah blah.
The most unnerving scene to me of the movie, more than the end scene when I first saw it, was when that idiot whose name escapes me right now throws away the map.
Yeah. That
and they start
me.
fighting because like, all of a sudden I was like, it's the Blair Witch Project. You're going to come up against the Blair Witch eventually. And the Blair Witch is going to be a problem for you. And the only way you're going to win is if you're united. And I watched them fall apart in front of my eyes and start like lying to each other for apparently no reason.
Yeah.
And it made me like feel like I was on a ship where like there was a storm and the ship was shifting left to right. And like You didn't know where you stood.
Yeah.
And I was like, wait, this sucks. Like,
Nothing about this is great.
right. I was actually more unnerved by the human element of it the first time I saw it than the end moment. And then like I came to appreciate like the other.
And even watching it more recently, I still think they did a pretty good job at like slowly like going crazy.
Right.
Like it wasn't like Cheeseball where you're like, oh yeah, this is fucking stupid. Like,
Right.
you know, and I watched it like probably most recent was like a year ago. We were at the old place. And I remember thinking like, oh, this is still pretty fucking good. Like, there's a few horror movies like that we watched, like how we talked in a few episodes back that haven't really dated that well. And since it's this kind of like documentary shot almost,
Right,
Like
totally.
it's still, I still think it holds up pretty good. We'll see. We'll see in another like 10 years. You remember that Blair Witch shit? It didn't hold up.
Well, I think it holds up really good, and I give it a blue ribbon for. There's a writer. I apologize if I'm getting him wrong, but there's a writer I love named Ramsey Campbell, and I think it was him who said it. But he said it was the greatest H.P. Lovecraft movie not based on an H.P. Lovecraft story ever made. And I found that really intriguing because like H.P. Lovecraft, one of his premises is like everything in the world is going to be swamped by some large, indifferent other thing that doesn't give a crap about us because we're too small for like whatever.
Yeah.
And, you know, I guess his point was that there's a larger force at work that just is going to keep collecting humans irregardless of like, you know, she doesn't care if you fight. She doesn't care how much you struggle. She's just going to collect you, right? Like,
just gonna happen.
it's just a bigger thing, like whatever. And that theme is held up from, you know, I mean, obviously before H.P. Lovecraft, but at least from H.P. Lovecraft to now, which means if it hasn't dated in 100 years, it's got a really good chance of going.
It still works. So
Cool.
Blair Witch, you did good.
Great choice.
You did good.
Right.
Congratulations.
Nice job, Blair Witch. Terrible job, Blair Witch sequel.
Not the director's fault.
No, not the director's fault.
Blame the producers.
Well, yeah, we haven't seen it. So I can't even say. Okay, so I'm so excited about. Like, I almost like feel like I have to personally apologize to this movie. Okay, so
Go on.
there's a movie called Carnival of Souls.
Mm-hmm.
It was for a long time a really underrecognized, unheralded movie. It's getting a lot more credit now. It's actually, considering it was added to the Criterion Collection series, like, I mean, there's you can't say that it's underappreciated at this point. But when I first saw this movie, I hated it. When I second saw this movie, I hated it. When I third saw this movie, I literally had a fantasy of throwing a brick at a television for the first time I can remember. And then I gave up on it and I walked away. And the reason that I hated this movie.
You give it a lot more chance than like
so
most people give any movie.
Okay, right. Well, yeah, but okay, so there's a reason that happened. Okay, so Carnival of Souls is a really interesting. There's a great story this guy tells. I can't remember where, but he was talking about how he stayed up late. He was watching TV when he wasn't supposed to. He was a kid. His parents are like, you know, your curfew's here. And 2 hours later, he's watching TV.
Yeah.
But he's sneaking it, so he's got to have the sound really low.
Yeah.
So he's watching TV and he sees this really spooky movie called Carnival of Souls comes on, and it blows his mind. And he goes the next day to school. And he tells all his friends, like, this movie is so great. Like, it's crazy. Like, and they look in the TV guide, like imagine like that is a thing. And it's not listed. And all his friends are like, you're a liar. Like, this wasn't even on. Like, this isn't a real thing. We've never heard of this.
Let me consult.
Right. Right. It's not on. Like, you didn't see it. Right. Like, and this guy to this day swears he saw that movie that night. But there's no verifiable proof that you know could have happened, right? So this movie could sneak up on you, and I had a similar situation. Right?
Oh, shit!
So I was watching this movie, past curfew. So what happened is the only TV in the house that was any good was in the family room. So my dad would watch like news and sports,
Yeah.
and fall asleep. I would steal the remote, right? So then when he would go to sleep on the couch, I would go into the kitchen and I would change the channels and keep the volume really low and watch movies in the room he was in, but I couldn't turn it up because he was there, right? So like I could hear nothing. Right, exactly. I wasn't hearing shit. Like so the first time I watched this movie, I hated it, but I was like, well, maybe you just hated it because you didn't hear any dialogue, really, right? Like,
which is a fair,
right? Give it another chance, like because it seemed to be attempting to tell a story, right?
See, it caught you visually.
Yeah, it caught. Well, no, I mean, I hated everything about this fucking movie.
So why the fuck would you?
But that's the thing is like, here's the one thing that my kid brain told me about this movie was, I knew from reading like other stuff, like there's the famous story called An Occurrence at Owl Creek Bridge. Most people read this when they're kids, but it's a guy and he's going to be hanged, and then they drop him, and I forget how it goes, someone comes by and shoots the rope, and the bullet slices the rope in half, and he escapes, and he runs around, he's trying to get away, and he makes friends, and they hide him, and he's trying to get away, and then someone catches him, and they're like, "You're caught now," and then his neck snaps in the rope, and none of that ever happened. He was hallucinating while he dropped, right? He's been dead. He was dead the whole time, right? It was just like this fantasy, right?
Yeah.
So like I knew that this movie was doing something like that, but without sound or dialogue, I couldn't figure out what the hell was happening.
So you were almost making your own movie.
But no, I was watching it and I was like, okay, this. I just want to know what the message of this was. I didn't like it. It was painfully.
That's what drove you crazy?
Yeah, it was painfully boring. But like there was a dun, 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 ending, and I was like, what the fuck does that ending mean? Like you
went searching for meaning.
Right. So I was like, all right, I'm gonna watch it again and I'm gonna figure out what the meaning is, right? So the next time I watch it, for some reason I catch it like 1/3 in, and then something happened where I couldn't watch the ending. So I watched like the middle, like 2/3 of it. And a lot of that, for anyone who's seen this movie, they're going to understand that a lot of that is like, you suck at playing the organ and you're fired, and now you go shopping and no one at the shopping center recognizes or even realizes you're there, and like whatever. And I couldn't associate with that at all at the time, right?
Yeah.
Like, so I was like, what the hell is this movie? Like, is this a movie where like, I mean, who in their right mind would make a fucking movie about someone who goes shopping for 20 minutes and can't buy anything?
Yeah,
like, what the hell? So, and then I watched it a third time, but by that time I was so agitated with it, I was like, whatever. Like, and I think at that time I watched it in a form, it's been incredibly restored now, but when you caught it on TV, it would be in horrible conditions sometimes. So you're looking at something that's really staticky and really over. So 3 strikes, you're out. I was like, fuck this movie. Like, you're right, never gonna happen again.
See you later.
And then I get the chance to see this restored on Criterion while visiting a friend's house. And I couldn't take my eyes off it. It is like just this amazing, there's no way to even explain the tone of what this is. So first of all, it's Night of the Living Dead before Night of the Living Dead. Okay, so it's like, I don't think it's 4 years before Night of the Living Dead.
All right.
Black and white, creepy zombie attacks, like just, like an amazing thing that they accomplished with like, I mean, the budget for this movie was like $3,000. I mean, or something ridiculous, right? And it's it's just a beautiful film. I think even more beautiful than Night of the Living Dead. But the thing that really, really blew my mind when I started, learning to appreciate things and give it a larger chance was that there's the magical synchronicity that happens when people bring a skill set to an area that they don't have a skill set, or they haven't applied their skill set. I should say, actually. So like, there are movie directors who aren't musicians, and then there's John Carpenter,
Yeah.
right? Like, I mean, when a movie director with a skill set from outside movie directing that's huge, like I'm a great musician, comes in, blam, they just lay down this great outside thing that hasn't happened before, right? These guys who made this movie, they cut their teeth on making educational films. Seriously, hundreds of educational films, like corny ass, like,
Jesus Christ.
like why you shouldn't eat schoolyard chalk and why, how to use a lathe, and like, I mean, just like
shitty,
like, right. Well, no, they were actually, I mean, that's the amazing thing is they're shitty cinematically, but guess what? You can take a filmmaker who like just, fucks around like Michael Bay and he can make a gazillion dollars, whatever. But these guys, they made crappy films that save people's lives. Don't chop off your fingers this way. Don't do this bad thing, like whatever. So like they were getting it done, right?
Yeah.
So they learned like this amazing technique of getting your message across short, no bullshit. And then they did the weirdest thing that anyone with that skill set has ever done. Let's make a dreamy, Twilight Zone-y black and white horror movie. That's the opposite of what you do,
They're
right?
like, fuck it, we're doing it live.
Well, but there's a reason, and this is why this is why I'm convinced that this movie is one of the greatest horror movies ever. The guy who made it was driving a long distance journey. He drives past this incredibly spooky, abandoned place called Saltaire outside of Salt Lake City. I'm showing Nick. This is the skyline. And
Very pretty.
He gets there the next day and he turns to his friend who ultimately wrote the script for Carnival of Souls that he worked with. And he said, this would be an amazing scene for a movie. We need to make a movie set. This is magical, right? So you know how like the Overlook Hotel in The Shining is like this malevolent, like, force, like whatever. This place in the world reached out to a guy who was never going to make a horror movie in a million years. And it scared the shit out of him at 2 a.m. in his car. And the next day he was like, we got to make a movie. And then he made a movie about that place that we're still talking about now. That place decided it didn't want to be forgotten, right?
So,
and became a thing, right? It took the least qualified people in the world to do it. And they did an amazing job.
so as they were driving down the road, like that building was like looking down the road, like, anyone else? Is anyone else going to drive by? Nope. Okay. Here we go.
No disrespect to them. Like literally, they brought like just an amazing skill set to what it was. But the point is that this thing was like, you know what? I'm going to pick the least likely messenger possible. And I know what I'm doing and you people don't. And it works. Like it is just this incredible display of like, and there's, all right. So there's like all these articles that I looked up written about how a lot of the acting in this movie is super like wooden, right? Like people are walking up and they're like, can I help you, young lady? Are you lost? Like whatever. And they're doing like this really like, like not even changing their facial expressions, like whatever. And then they'll go to the educational movies and they're giving the same delivery. Like, hey, young man, are you lost? Come over here. Let me teach you a lesson on how to use a chainsaw. And that in an educational movie, that's the kind of thing where you're looking at it and you like Mystery Science Theater, you want to send it to them and be like, make fun of this, right?
Yeah.
You put it in a black and white existential horror movie and they're creepy as shit. It works, right?
What creeped you out, like when you became obsessed with it? The fourth time you watched it, you're like, okay, this is the film. Like, what was the moment where it clicked for you, where you're like, oh fuck, I do like this?
So it's it's for me personally, it's when I let go of the thing that irritated me from the start, which was looking for the message. Instead of looking for the message and trying to see the clues and trying to like sixth sense it, like where's all the red?
Yeah.
Just watching it and letting it go, that's when I realized that like this is one of those amazing accidents mixed with sheer skill and determination that became like great all the way through. No apologies. They just did something that is never going to be done again, right? So like I just had to let go of looking for the what clues are they sending me that she's actually dead or like whatever, and just be in it, right? Because there's all these like moments that bored me when I was a kid, like she's getting when you think about there's moments in this movie where she's getting relentlessly hit on by this guy who I heard him described in a video essay as, there's a character, he's like this guy who keeps hitting on her, and he's described in this essay as a miasma of oiliness and desperation in human form.
Gross.
Is I think how they put it. And it was perfect. That's what he is, right?
Oh.
But there's these scenes where he's like hitting on her, and you know, it bored the crap out of me when I was a kid. Mm-hmm. But when you watch it and appreciate it, you realize that, you know, this is the last person, you know, that thing, that joke about like, if the world was wiped out and there was only two people left, I wouldn't want it to be you. Mm-hmm. Right.
Yeah.
Like that's this guy. Right. But she's so terrified because I think, you know, in her heart of hearts, she knows she's actually already gone. Mm-hmm. She's so terrified that this guy is horrible and she hates him and she blows him off sometimes and like whatever. But when he leaves, she's literally like, no, don't go. I don't want to be alone.
Gotcha.
Right?
So then he sleaze his back like...
No, he's gone. But no, because he just sleeps while he leaves. Like, he's not going to... It's the first authentic thing she said to him, and he can't recognize it because he's a jackass. But that's the thing is, you know, there are these moments that integrate with what the movie's trying to do in a really genius way that I just missed the first time, the second time, third time, like whatever, that you get when you give it a chance, you know? So this is an amazing movie with amazing music, and it was done by people who I think brought something to filmmaking that I wish way more people could bring, which is, you know, they accomplished something in a different form, and then they took the chance on doing it like in a place where you wouldn't expect them to succeed, and they pull it off. Mm-hmm.
Did you ever find any meaning like watching the film? Personally, like I know it'd be different for multiple people, but what did you take away?
That's an interesting question. I mean, obviously the meaning of the film, it's basically Final Destination.
Oh,
like she's basically bought herself a few days until death corrects like the error.
Right? Gotcha.
So like, I mean, the meaning is, and the fact that they did it so many years before the Final Destiny. I wish there was Carnival of Souls 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 3D. 10, right? 3D. No, fuck that. But personally, I think the meaning I found like in it that was not thematic, but just like personally what it meant to me was that there's a madness buried in this movie that is really, really like a great horror movie can hit all the beats and do all the things like that's why something like you know, Paranormal Activity leaves me cold is I feel like that it's hitting beats without letting itself get out of control in a great way.
Yeah.
Right. And this, like, they had some control, but when your budget's $13,000, there's all kinds of shit that's not under your control. Yeah. Right? And they just had to go with it and make it work and like whatever, you know? So like, you know, there's scenes in this where whether they're quiet and small or they're large, and like, there's a great scene where all the zombies are like waltzing and dancing and they all come running after her. And, it's just, that scene is just nuts. Like I mean, there's no way to like even talk about like what that would mean, because she's in a pure panic and she's just running and they're just after her. And like, I mean, what are you going to do? Like in a horror movie, like Like in a Friday the 13th situation, the victims outnumber the killer,
Yeah.
right? It reminds me of those nature documentaries where they're like the 1,000 wildebeest try to cross the river, and like the one alligator sits in the river, and he comes up and tries to eat one, and they all freak out. I don't know what to do there.
Well, one of the alligators, instead of grabbing the wildebeest, grabbed a battery and drained it dry. So that's what that's what it reminded you of.
Yeah, well, no, it just reminded me of the fact that, you know, when you look at most horror movies, the situation is the victims are not supernaturally powerful, or they're armed, and the victims outnumber their hunter, like Jason, or I mean, Michael Myers is standing in the middle of the street. There's like houses up and down. There's like 100 people that could come help, but they're not going to do anything because whatever, they're outnumbered. They outnumber him, but they're not going to do anything. In this case, it's just her against basically everybody. And I think that's one of the really great, chilling things that this movie did better than almost anyone else, and probably did it earlier than almost anyone else, was it was like, you know, what's real horror? Real horror is when it's just you. And everyone else is against you. Right?
Exactly.
So I think that's a really interesting meaning that this had that I would have never appreciated watching with no fucking sound when I was 12 years old.
No. It took a while. So Carnival of Souls.
What do you got next?
So, all right. A lot of people are going to be like, what the fuck? How did you not like this when you first saw it? But I...
At Nicholas Rollins on Twitter. Go ahead, let him know.
Nicky Roll.
Sorry,
Nicky Roll. I was not a fan of the X-Files when I was young. When I first saw the X-Files, back when it was on Fox, I didn't like it. What? I didn't like it. I remember my dad would watch it, and not, how sometimes like when your parents like something becomes like uncool.
Sure.
Almost. I think it was that.
That makes sense.
I remember like watching one episode with like a killer doll, and they kill it by putting it in the microwave, and thinking that was a little bit freaky. But that was it. I never could get into any of the other episodes.
Wait, are you seeing this broadcast in real time at this point?
This is when it was being broadcast.
And what season were you jumping in?
Shit, I have no idea. It was when David Duchovny was still on the show.
Okay.
I didn't see anything.
But it wasn't season 1 and 2. It was like,
I have no idea. But it was shit, I don't even know what years it ran. So it was being broadcast. I remember but
you're still catching it in real time. And I remember your dad was like, I like this show.
Yeah. And I remember watching it and being like, what the fuck is this? Like, I didn't understand. I think the big thing that I did not understand was one was a skeptic and one was a believer, which I think would have changed everything. If I had understood that when I was younger, of like, oh, that's the whole fucking dynamic of the show.
Right.
Like, that is what hinges everything for them to discuss it about and explore. I didn't get that as a kid. I was just waiting for Batman the animated series to come on. Because that's the only thing I gave a shit about.
Right.
But I didn't like the X-Files, and I didn't like it for a while. And then I remember when the movie came out, I thought, oh, it's that X-Files, show. They made a movie. Who gives a fuck? I don't care. Never and I didn't see that either. So, and I remember my dad just really fucking he enjoyed it. I don't know if he was in love with it, but it was a show that he would watch. I don't know, regularly, but I remember him having it on the tube, watching it and me being like, this fucking blows. I'm not in it. And it wasn't until, and I think a lot of the stuff, movie stuff, when you start dating a writer who talks a lot about writing, characters, structure and all that other shit, and they start introducing you to stuff, other shows and stuff with the writer's mentality of it, you grow to like it. And Alex, who was on a few episodes ago, she talked to me. She was like, how can you love horror and all this other shit and not like the X-Files? I was like, I just don't like it. And even then I was denying that I liked it without giving it a second shot, because I knew I didn't like it when I was a kid. Right. I think it's because that episode with the doll really scared me, because I think there's a doll that could control people. And she has old lady take a record and breaks it in half, and then makes her stab herself in the throat.
Right.
And
Yes.
I remember like checking out, being like, yeah, no, I'm just not about. I'm not about. That did it.
Right.
Not for me. And
Do you remember seeing any of what they called the mythology shows when you were younger? Like, were you seeing stuff where they're hunting down UFOs and like whatever, or were you catching mainly the?
no, I don't remember watching much of that stuff. Like growing up, there was always like other horror shows that I would watch, like Nickelodeon's Are You Afraid of the Dark?
Sure.
That kind of stuff. But for some reason, when I was younger, I never compared it to X-Files.
No, I feel like X-Files might be a hard kind of thing to jump into in the middle.
Yeah.
Because there were so many episodes that were callbacks to like a bigger story arc.
Mm-hmm.
And I can imagine trying to jump in, you know, I already don't want to like this because my dad doesn't like it. And I jump in and there's this boring episode where it's 40 minutes of was Scully impregnated by aliens and like, what the hell? And like,
And it never really resonated with me. But what's weird though, I remember when I was sick home for school for like a week, they had a spin-off series, The Lone Gunman. I think was that.
Yes, they did.
I remember I loved that show, and I watched the first episode
shit.
of it, and I was like, "This is great." No fucking clue that it was connected to the
I haven't
X-Files.
thought of that show in so long.
You remember that?
Yeah, I did.
That was great.
Crazy.
And I loved that show, but no fucking clue that it was connected to the X-Files.
Wow.
So when I found that out years later, I was like, "Well, wait a minute. Why did I like this show?"
Mm-hmm.
And I don't even remember that show anymore. I don't remember. I can remember like the one guy being like, "Yeah, we can get cars to run on water, but then we have to drive this shitty vehicle." Like that was like their joke. But it's weird that I liked their spinoff, but I didn't like the actual show itself, and I didn't even know it was a spinoff. Which I guess that's weird. But then it wasn't till like 3 years ago or whenever Alex had me watch it. There was, I think, 3 episodes that she showed me that really fucking like sold me on the X-Files. It was, the first one was, I think they called him like the Rubber Man. Mm-hmm. Do you remember that? The serial killer who could like.
That's the first X-Files episode I ever saw.
It was a really, and it was great because like it's fucking terrifying. You can't keep this guy confined. He can always get his way out. Right. And it ends with that really cool shot of him in the jail cell and his eyes like on there, and they lit his eyes really well. Fucking sold me on it. I was like, this is some great shit. Actually, that was the second episode she showed me.
Okay.
That was the second episode.
That's so weird because that is literally the episode that sold me on that series.
Well, that was the one, like there was 3, and like that was one of like the 3 nails that really was like, Nick, this is for you. The first one, because Alex knows I love monsters and I really love Frankenstein. So she showed me an episode called, oh my God, what was it? Postmodern Prometheus. Mm-hmm. Do you remember that episode?
Yeah, of course.
Black and white.
It's a great episode, yep.
And it's a little rapey, but like they end up falling in love with the guy.
Right.
So,
but it's just so well done. The entire,
and it's a feel good ending, and it's the song that also got me to like the song "Walking in Memphis," Cher's version to be specific.
Oh no!
And I loved like him just dancing through the fucking houses when they were being fumigated, and like it was a really like heartwarming episode, I guess. And I was kind of like, well, this is a nice episode. Is the whole series like that? And Alex is like, well, not exactly. Let me show you this episode. And it was the one, you know which one it is, the fucking family one.
The Home. Yeah.
The Home.
Yeah.
And she showed me that one. I was like, wait a minute.
Yeah.
You just showed me this fucking happy-go-lucky dancing rapey Frankenstein that it made me feel great for him. And now you're going to show me this family that's fucking their mom under the house?
Yeah.
What the fuck is this show?
Yep.
So those 3 episodes, The Serial Killer, The Family, Postmodern Prometheus.
Sure.
That is the perfect package for anyone who was skeptical about the X-Files, because you get a little bit of everything.
Yeah.
It's a nice little platter to try. And from there I was just like, holy fucking shit. Like I missed out on all this. Like I could have watched. I mean, there was no way young Nick would have been like, no. Okay, one's a skeptic, one's a believer. They have this intertwining thing. Everyone at the FBI thinks he's crazy. Like I wasn't gonna give a fuck about that. But now that I saw it when I'm older, I'm like, holy fucking shit. Like I almost like wish I could have understood it back then, because there's something to like you mentioned whenever like we talk about like Twin Peaks. There's something about like taking it in while it's happening.
Yes.
and, and like talking about it, like when it's happening and like getting
Absolutely.
jazzed about it. But I would have never fucking picked up on that. But luckily they, brought it back, which I watched a couple episodes.
Yeah, what'd you think?
I saw that they did them out of order for one reason or another. And I think they said there's a cool monster episode in there, but I never got to it. I watched like 2 episodes with Alex.
There is a great episode where someone controls things telepathically. She's kind of confined, and I don't remember exactly how it went, but I thought it was like perfectly adequate.
Well, I'll have to go back and watch it, but I just remember like it wasn't as good as either of those 3 episodes that I had saw before. But yeah, I mean, I really dig it now, and it's it almost makes sense being that I enjoy Monster of the Week, like shows like The Flash, where it's like Villain of the Week, or like the anthology stuff, which is just combined bite-sized horror. It makes sense that the X-Files would sooner or later find its way into me like really fucking enjoying it.
Sure.
So, and then I think I was when we're done today, I need to like do some work, but I wanted to watch the season 3 episode that we talked about with Jack Black and the Lightning Guy.
Yeah, it's amazing.
So I wanted to check that one out. But the X-Files is one that I'm glad that I eventually had shown to me about how fucking cool it was. Because there's so much shit in there that I love.
Well, and so that's a really interesting. So, the concept is, what did you see that you hated when you were young, or the first time you encountered it that you got to admire, but later, right? Carnival of Souls hasn't changed. I mean, it looks way better on Criterion than it did when I saw it on TV, but it hasn't changed. It's a thing, right? And I suspect almost everything we talk about today is going to be just a thing, right? X-Files was wildly uneven. Like, there are episodes that just fucking suck, right? And there are episodes that are just some of the best stuff that was ever on TV, right? Yeah. So you are already handling something that's inherently unstable.
Exactly.
Right? So like there are, I would love to have feedback after the episode from people who are like, what X-Files episode should Nick watch next? Because I think that there's people who would have had a really similar love-hate relationship with the show, who are in the same boat as you, and then came back and appreciated something, and they were like, this is the episode that brought me in, back in. And it would be fascinating to know what those are, because you pick something that's like, it's radioactive. It's not stable. Like,
well, they also go between like sci-fi and horror, and horror, and then they have, some overarch.
And then there's the movies, which, I actually enjoyed the movies. Like, they didn't bother me. It was just, you have to move away from some of your strengths. Like, I feel like a lot of what X-Files was doing right was the Monster of the Week stuff. It was that anthology, like, we all miss Twilight Zone, so here
it is now.
Right, here you go. And you can't do that in a movie.
No.
Right? So you already like gave away, like, it's like you're playing poker and you're like, don't give me any aces. I'm just going to beat you with the rest of the deck. Like, don't deal me aces. I got this. Like, and you're like, wait, what? You're either super confident or you're going to lose. Like, what are the, which is how those movies felt. But great choice, because I find that fascinating, because that was the thing where if you charted it for me, I was all in to begin with, because the first episode I ever saw was the Rubberman episode, which was amazing. And then I watched it until, I don't know, maybe season 4, like whatever. And then I was like, what? Like, never.
Is that when T2 takes over?
Yeah. I was like, never again. Like, and then I came back to it. Right. So like this is, our chart is hate it and then it just climbs. But my chart was like a roller coaster. It was like big hill, drop, big hill.
Yeah.
Right. So
I'm sure if I went through the whole fucking like series, I'd feel pretty mediocre. But the fact that I watched like the gems.
I think you'd know. They did a really good job. That is not easy to do in that medium. Like you brought up Twin Peaks, like that, David Lynch was and Mark Frost were getting hammered, slaughtered from outside, saying, make this more understandable, more conventional, don't lose the viewers, like whatever. That was the worst advice they could have got. Like, when you do TV, you're getting hit from all sides by people who are like, no, everything you're doing is great except for change it completely.
Yeah.
right?
Let me
And
tell you how to do it.
Right, and they went against that stream for a long time, and I find that nothing but impressive.
And they have the episodes to show it. And they knocked it out. So X-Files for me.
Boom.
So I got one more movie, and then I got a video game. Possibly a few video games, but I got one in there that I know is in there for sure. And I haven't told you about this film, but I remember watching it like...
Wait, this is the thing you were going to tell me about until now, right?
Till now.
Okay.
Some of the stuff we discussed before, but then we keep a few secrets in there.
Right.
So I did not like The Others when I first watched it.
Oh my God.
Did you like it? Did you love it from the beginning, or did you hate it?
Oh my God.
I don't know where we stand. Where do you stand?
It's one of the best horror movies ever made. What the hell?
I hated it. And I remember like we watched it and my cousin came in and she was just...
You didn't watch it.
No.
You must have been like in another
fucking
room.
watched it.
You didn't. No way.
I watched it and then my cousin came in. I was like, oh, they're dead the whole time. Oh, okay. Great. Fucking great. Bullshit. Wasted my whole fucking 2 hours. That was a long movie. I remember my cousin came in and was like, oh, I knew they were dead the whole time.
Right.
And I'm like, no, you fucking didn't. There's no way. Because it was boring as shit.
Right.
And I hated it. And I remember the trailer for that one, like, your daughter, I am your daughter. And I was like, how the fuck is that scared? Just some nasty ass old lady in a veil scared. This is bullshit.
So wait, before you go on, you realize what's happening here, right? I mean, we are both doing movies where someone's dead the whole time that doesn't know it.
That is weird. Are we dead right now? Or is this like
let us know.
Yeah, let us know if we're alive.
Tweet
guys.
at us if you don't tweet at us. We're just gonna assume we're dead. Okay, good.
So, but yeah, I remember like the seeing the trailer for a whole bunch of times, and then I remember when it went on to like on demand, we watched it, and I was like, I don't get it, man. Like, you know, like, I don't know. And here's why I think I didn't like it. And I've noticed this with a few things, and like, you know, I love gore and all that stuff. Like, I can handle it. Like, unless it's like real life gore, and then I like Alex like showed me like she cut her finger, and I was like, ugh,
Right, exactly.
I can't do it. But movie gore, video game gore, do whatever you want. Turn someone inside out. Don't give a fuck. But as I've gotten older, like it starts to gross me out a little more. I'm like, oh, I don't know if I can like stomach some of this shit. And I think the same thing happened with The Others, because I remember I think I was either like 12 or 13 or something like that when I watched it. I don't remember exactly. It was at least middle school, and I didn't have like the compassion for Nicole Kidman's like family. So like I didn't like really understand like how terrifying it was from her perspective of all that shit going on, and then like the two like groundskeepers or whatever the fuck they were there. So I didn't have much stock into like what she was going through. Like for her character wasn't relatable to me as a teenage boy who had like long greasy hair,
right,
and just wanted to play guitar. I was just like, show me the horror, man. Show me the jump scares.
Right.
Show me this stuff. But then so it just didn't work for me. And then when the whole reveal, like I got it, but like I didn't understand. Like, okay, so they've been dead the whole time. Why are you showing me their story? I don't care about these ghosts anymore. Like I'm immediately like, I don't give a shit. I don't care. But then when Alex and I rewatched it, like it was a few months ago. It was this year.
Is this another Alex credit? Did she come to you and be like,
no, because I had told her that I had watched it. She had never seen it.
Okay.
She had never seen it. And I remember I told her, I was like, you know, I know everyone like likes this movie. I personally didn't like it. So I was like, fuck it. I'll give it a go. And it, you know, you just mentioned like setting the world. Holy fucking shit. Is that movie great? I loved it the second time because like, you know, I'm a big sucker. Like one of my favorite films is Tim Burton's Sleepy Hollow because I love the town. I love the town.
It's so funny you say that because the first movie The Others makes me think of as Beetlejuice.
That's funny.
Right.
Puts it all in that kind of world. Well, I think it's, you know, it's the setting of that film, the fact that they're in this house. And my favorite part was when, God, who was it? they say like the dad's coming home, remember?
Yes.
And she goes to fucking run out to go get him, and she goes into the fog and gets lost. That's the scene where I was like, fuck.
They're doing this right.
They're doing this right. Like they're just, and like it almost made me, and then that's when like, I think I felt different when I watched it when I was older, as opposed to like 12 or 13, not really giving a shit. I actually like, I felt like really fucking sad for her, because like that's when like the two like groundskeepers are like, let her run, she'll figure it out. And then like, you know, I pieced that together and I was like, oh shit, like they're gonna actually feel like hopelessness, they're lost. And like I could connect more with that, you know, one, because I was more focused onto it, and you know, I don't know how much age actually fucking matters
Right.
to taking something seriously. Obviously when you're 13 you shit on everything, that's what you do. But watching it then, like I just felt more it felt more like, I know it's still like horror because it's a ghost story, you know, and that automatically puts it in there, but it's almost like I don't know, it's like a heartbreaking kind of film, just because they're stuck there forever. And the other thing is, it's so genius to tell the story from the ghost, because every other fucking movie is always like, hey, it would have been the people in the house and the ghost doing weird shit.
Right.
But then they're like, no. You're with the ghost.
Right. And Beetlejuice is told from the ghost point of view. That's right. Exactly.
And
That's the thing is like,
and it's fucking great. See, if they had Michael Keaton jump up, like hey, Nicole, you want a snack nut? Like, it would have made it so fucking cool. But then it made this shit like the, you know, what are you talking about? I am your daughter scene more terrifying when I was older. I was like, oh fuck, like it's like the weird like old blindish like lady,
sure,
you know, trying to, because she was like wasn't she like the exorcist lady in that house, like trying to get the ghost to like show themselves or you know, try to exorcise the whatever. So it made that even more terrifying, because I could actually like comprehend the whole story as a whole. I could actually buy the setting. Like I'm a sucker for the setting,
right?
And I think, like we mentioned, Fog. The Fog played a huge fucking, you know, last episode we mentioned Fog, huge fucking deal in this fucking movie. She runs out into the fog. It's an endless pit, and like I don't know, like something about that still, like even just talking about it now, like it's hitting me. Like,
so I'm gonna make a prediction for you. That movie is gonna be even scarier 10 years from now to you than it is now when you're recording this. Because buried in that movie, like I hate, like, twist ending movies drive me crazy. And this is not like, to me, I watched the others 3 times. The first time the twist got me, I didn't see it coming. I wasn't even trying to see it coming. I was kind of just enjoying
you were just doing it.
The second time, the movie scared me more, even knowing what was coming, because I was picking up all the details that led to exactly what you described, which was they're in a really hopeless situation. But one of the amazing things about that movie, like one thing that horror movies do really well, is the train runs on 2 tracks. Okay, so the first track is going to scare you with something unlikely. I got 5 blades on my hand and I can enter your dreams.
Yeah.
Doesn't happen every day, right? But the other track is, I can't go to sleep, and your parents are going to keep going, you know, all you need to do is go to sleep. Just go to sleep. It'll solve everything. Just go to sleep, right? So, like, bad advice combined with, you know, supernatural force after you. Horror movies, when they're clicking on all cylinders, a lot of times they're going to give you one real-world horror and one unlikely horror, right? And they when they work together, you're like outnumbered automatically, right?
Yeah.
The horrors in the others, the real world horror is responsibility. That entire movie smells like responsibility to me. Like, you got to be responsible. You got to be responsible for kids' lives. You got to be responsible for the routine, the organization, the property. And the older you get, the more horrifying the idea of responsibility becomes. Because it's not going to get lighter; it's going to get heavier, right? And that was the thing about that movie that really struck me, was I was like, this movie knows what it's doing, because it's giving you a really, really unlikely horror that is completely the mirror image of a likely horror, and they're working together.
Yeah.
And the more you realize that and live it and experience it in your life and then come back and watch it, the more you're like, oh, God damn it.
Yeah. It's
right? Like,
and I'm glad. I'm actually. It's one of the films that like. Well, I'm always glad when I rewatch something and I like it. But like after I watched it the second time, I was like, oh, I get it. I understand why it's on everyone's list. Like because like a lot of those people probably felt the same way I did the second time, probably the first time watching it.
sure.
Where you just like feel so sad for everyone in that fucking movie, which a lot of horror films normally don't do. It's usually there's a body count. Something cool probably happens, and then you're done.
Yep.
Villain dies, but this one, like you're left kind of feeling like shit. You're like, oh well, she murdered her kids. They're trapped there forever. Never gonna see their dad again. They're never gonna grow old. Like, fuck, that's scary. Now the only thing I would have done differently is if the ghosts start communicating with the humans, and then they play that dun 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 dun. They start fucking dancing like in the end of Beetlejuice.
That would be amazing.
That would have been cool. But then it wouldn't.
The others too.
The others too.
Dance of Secrets.
Dance.
Make that movie.
Or don't. Please don't.
No,
it's
please.
fine. It's fine the way it
Please,
is. It
it's
really
fine.
is.
Okay.
I'm still pulling for Beetlejuice.
The others 3D. Come on.
It would. It might work. But anyways, that one. That's my one that a lot of it has to do with just like taking the movie a lot more seriously when I'm older.
Right.
So that one did it, and I'm glad to.
Well,
have
and that's,
enjoyed it.
but that's interesting because there are movies that you encounter when you're young that scare the crap out of you, where you never, I wouldn't have wanted my first experience of seeing Spielberg produced Poltergeist as an adult. Because I feel like it would have left me cold. But as a kid, scared the shit out of me. Fucking clown under the bed.
Yeah.
Like, scary then. Like, scary now, no. But, like there's movies that come along at the right times and movies that don't, come along at the wrong times. And like, that's kind of the interesting thing about the whole subject of what we're talking about is that, there are those things where you can't appreciate them at certain times and you do later. Like, whatever.
Yeah.
But there are some glorious, you've talked about this. There's some amazing scares to be had, whether it was in cartoons or TV commercials or things that randomly floated by when you were a kid, where you never want to give that up. Because I literally have no memories from the age of 6 except for one scare. I have no other memories. I don't remember my birthday. I don't remember playing with my friends. I remember one jump scare. So it's that's there's a memory thing that you wouldn't want to trade with. All right, so
I got one video game, and you got.
I have a movie and a thing. So I'm gonna blitz through the movie, and then we'll do the video game, and I'll finish. So
cool.
The movie I'm gonna blitz through real quick is Dressed to Kill. So Brian De Palma does this incredibly weird movie, and I can't even really do justice to how I first saw this movie. Like the first time I saw it, I thought I might be having an aneurysm as a child. Like
that almost gave you an aneurysm. Carnival of Souls, though.
Right. Well, yeah, but who knew what was happening? Like, there's a guy who looks like a girl who's running out of an elevator and stabbing people, and I was like, what? But the thing that was really off about this movie was there are incredibly long, boring stretches of time in the movie, including an opening scene with music that if you put it when you edit this, if you put the music in the beginning, no one will listen to the podcast because they'll just fall asleep. So it's just incredibly boring, stretches of time punctuated by really weird moments of whatever. And I hated it. I absolutely hated it. And what made me hate it more, which is why I wanted to put it on my list, was just when you think you're at your full capacity of hating something, it's interesting when you can hate it more, right? So I was like, I started to really get into Hitchcock, and then everywhere I turned, people were talking about how Brian De Palma, the director of Dressed to Kill, is kind of like an imitator of Hitchcock. And then I would go back and I'd be like, oh, you started your movie with a shower scene. Brilliant. Oh, knife attack. Brilliant. Fuck you. What are you doing? You're just literally ripping off Hitchcock. Why
you got super disgruntled
right,
about it.
Right. Gus Van Sant was honest. He was like, Psycho. Boom, I'll just do it shot for shot.
Yeah.
So I got really like pissed off. I was like, okay, not only does your movie suck, but your movie sucks and you're ripping off someone who doesn't suck. Like, good job, right?
So it doubled down.
So I was like,
for you.
fuck you, gone, never give you any thought again. So this movie floats up because I get this amazingly weird impulse to watch everything Michael Caine's ever been in, right? Because he's just an amazing actor, right?
Yeah.
So
Michael Caine.
So I realized, like, when I rewatch it, that almost everything, not everything, but almost everything that I hate about this movie, I shouldn't have hated. Like, it is derivative, but in a good way. It does have freaky, stretchy, boring parts, but they're there for a reason. And the most amazing thing that happens here is, so like, the worst, clunkiest part of Psycho is Norman Bates, the doctor, the psychiatrist, explaining at the end about how Norman Bates is two people. I mean, you have this great movie, and then there's this weird tacked on end where there's like a 7-minute dialogue about Norman Bates is Norman Bates, but when he's not Norman Bates, he's his mother, like whatever. And it's obnoxious, it's clumsy, and it shouldn't be there, right?
Yeah.
Brian De Palma accomplishes the same thing in 6 seconds in Dress to Kill. There's a moment where this woman walks in, Nancy Allen, amazing actress. She walks in at the end of near the end of the movie, and her plan is she's going to hit on Michael Caine. She's going to get him to get distracted, sleep with her, whatever. And while he's like baffled, she's going to go sneak and find information that she needs to catch the killer. And she, like, hits on him, and she's like, do you find me attractive? He's like, yes. She's like, do you want to sleep with me? He's like, yes. She's like, all right, I'm going to go in the other room and get comfortable. So she goes in the room and she sneaks off, and she's rifling through the information because she thinks she has the upper hand. Like, I'm outsmarting you. Whatever. Michael Caine looks down at a mirror on his desk, and he's like, and he gives this look like, I got this, mad ladies man, she's hitting on me, like whatever. And you think everything's fine, but it's not. Like, he's a transsexual. Like, he's not into her at all. He's going to go change into women's clothes and then kill her. Like, he's doing that thing to the mirror. Like, we got another one. Like,
Giving himself the
like literally that dual personality, like situation that even Hitchcock, like one of the greatest directors of all kind, of fumbled. Brian De Palma, like, it's like watching a ice skater do like a quadruple spin, land, and then skate off and be like, give me that gold medal. He was like, I'll just do it better. And the more I looked into Brian De Palma, the more I realized that he's a ferociously competitive filmmaker. Right. So like when he did the end of Carrie with that famous jump scare with the hand coming out of the ground, right? Whatever. He had seen another jump scare in another movie that I can't remember right now. But when he saw that, he was so aggravated. He was like, oh, I could do that so much better. And then he filmed the Carrie jump scare, which is one of the best of all time, because he's motivated by, like, I see it, but I'm going to do it better. Like, I can do it better. Like, whatever.
That's a cool mentality.
Exactly. And he goes into it almost like a guerrilla filmmaker. When I first saw it, I was coming at it from a standpoint of, you're a thief. You're stealing your ideas from other people. And I've really come to appreciate the power of someone who artistically is like, I have my own vision. I'm also going to look at other people's vision. And when I see something that, like, is one of the things that just has to be there, I recognize it's got to be there, but I'm going to do it better.
That's so fucking rad.
Right. So I mean, I hated it. And then now I'm like, I could just watch that movie on loop. Just amazing.
Or you could probably just watch Michael Caine winking and get the same.
No, well, yeah.
The
I
same
mean,
effect.
it's just, but there was a lot of underrated acting. Like there's a sleazy cop situation with Dennis Franz, who is, he's obviously not like an amazing actor, but like perfect for that like role, whatever. But it was better acting. It was better structure, and then there's double upon double upon double at the end, which is just Brian De Palma being like, you know what? If you're going to film a movie with two doubles, I'm going to give you 8. Fuck you.
We're going big.
Right, exactly. I really appreciate that guerrilla mentality. I think it fits the horror genre. So
Wonderful. Dress to Kill.
great movie.
That's me every day. Okay, so I got one. There's two. Okay, so I'm gonna go a different route, which this is a topic we're gonna do in the future. I just gotta figure out a way for George to take in the medium somehow. The media, video games.
Yes.
There's two. Actually, there's 3, but there's one that I know for certain that I love now that I didn't appreciate then. Well, the one right on the top of my head was Silent Hill. Main reason being, there's always, whether or not it's amongst the community, there was always a rift between Resident Evil and Silent Hill. It was always either of those two. You're either a Resident Evil guy or a Silent Hill dude. You know what I mean? Like it was you usually you had one that scared you, and I was always Resident Evil because I loved the action of it. I did not like Silent Hill because I thought it was too like this isn't the right word, but I thought it was like too psychedelic. Like it was too fucking weird for me. Like
No, it's perfect.
Like Resident Evil, T-Virus goes out in Raccoon City, the dead are eating the flesh of the living. Great. Silent Hill, what the fuck is going on? Like that was me, how I took it in my head. And I'm talking when I talk about Silent Hill, it's the one that I played. There was 2 that I really loved. It was Silent Hill 2 for the PlayStation 2, and then Silent Hill Origins for the PlayStation Portable. And when I first tried playing Silent Hill 2, I didn't enjoy it. I didn't think it was fun. I thought the controls were clunky. The camera sucked. I didn't like the puzzles. I thought it was weird. So I hated it. I just didn't enjoy it. But then, and this also goes to like the movie theater mentality. It was in high school. I think I went to like GameStop and bought it used for like $10 again. And it was the same group of my friends who loved horror movies. We were like, okay, we're going to go through and we're going to beat Silent Hill. So I remember we loaded it up, and in the fucking beginning of the game, you walk forward, and this fucking like dude on like I don't know if it's like a guy or a bug fucking crawls over the screen and runs underneath the van, and we all fucking like lifted our legs up off the couch, and I just remember like that terrified me. And then I tried to play the game by myself. Whenever I play horror games, I try to play them like the way they're meant to be played, like I play it basically the way your eye doctor tells you not to play it. In the dark, close to the screen.
That should be on the blurb cover of all video games when they're sold. Like,
well, I think some of them do tell you like play in a well-lit room.
No, play the way your eye doctor doesn't want you to.
Yeah, that's the way they do it. Up close to the screen. So Silent Hill was one that it's just so fucking weird that I love it. Like, we talk about, like Pyramid Head, like all the fucking time. How he's just so fucking weird. Like, I don't know if he's like raping these corpses or like whatever I still don't know what the fuck he's doing with them. I know he's like a one-hit kill boss. Like if he hits you once, like you're out of there. So like that really fucked with me. And it's another one of those things. Like I think the thing we keep hitting on, it's like tone and setting. Silent Hill they did a great job with the movie. Like that got it from the games because the games did it so goddamn well. You just don't feel good. Like with Resident Evil, you're in a rundown like post-apocalyptic town.
Right.
It still looks familiar. Like this is a street, that's a cop car,
right.
This is a building, or this is a mansion. Whichever one you're playing.
Yep.
But with Silent Hill, you can't really place it. Like there's like a school, like a church. I think there's some other buildings, but like the fact that like it's snowy, it's like that, like the fog's everywhere, you can't really see where you're going, you just can't place where you're at mentally, which makes everything so much fucking
and you put your finger on it. As a horror fan, I find that really interesting. As you get older, you appreciate closed genres less, right? Like when you're a kid, you're like, oh, slasher all the way, whatever you're gorehound. But when you get older, you want something that bleeds across different, boundaries, right? So like Resident Evil is basically a Western.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, people draw all the time, and it's like, it's that wasteland landscape is basically that kind of territory. Silent Hill is, I mean, what the hell are you going to call that? Like,
Yeah, I don't know.
coal mine horror genre? Like, I mean, you're a genre of one. Like, there's no, like, it's off. Right?
Yeah, and it just puts you, and that's the thing that I think I ended up liking about it is like I don't know where I'm at, and like that's the whole point of the like video games is to like explore. I guess the whole fucking purpose of like those types of games is you go figure it out, you solve those puzzles, and the story unveils itself to you.
Right.
The more you explore, like that's the reward is you get told this wonderfully crafted story. But goddamn, I couldn't get through it. So,
No,
it's the first parts.
right.
And then I know I said 3 games. One of them's Outlast, just because I hate getting chased. But to be honest, now that I say it, I loved it the whole way through. But the one game that I've only played it for like 45, 50 minutes, and I hate it because it's too scary for me. Which I'm gonna sound like a total fucking pussy. But Alien Isolation, I can't get through it, and I haven't even like encountered the alien yet. Which is terrible to say.
You're like scared before the boss.
Yeah, I
right?
played it. The whole thing is, I can't tell you what the whole thing is because I got 45 minutes. But there was a few things like where you're ducking under to like get past. It's like telling you how to use the controls and like like a gas valve goes, psh, and I was like, nope, I can't do it. I can't do it. So I even though it's not like something from like when I was young to now, I can tell you from when I bought the game to play it, I didn't like it. Too scary. But when Halloween comes around, you'll
bust it out.
I will
Right.
I will try and I will report back with my full review for this game that's been out forever.
Well, yeah, but so that's the thing, right? The interesting thing is the people who were paid a lot of money to design that game were paid that money directly. I'm going to hand you that money in your hand if you can accomplish this effect on that human being.
Yeah.
That's what they're trying to do.
And the game does even when you start, what I love about the game, it's so like graphically, it's fucking beautiful. I love the way that it looks, but it has like this vintage look to it. So like when you first open it up, it does the Fox logo, but it looks like it looks like it's being played via VHS.
Right.
Like I can show it to you because I have it like loaded.
That's great.
It's fucking cool as shit.
That's great.
And like, and it takes place like I think you play Ripley's daughter. Like I think by that time Ripley's gone. Like I think it's like many years later.
Right.
She's done the same shitter, I believe. But like even like the green text on the computer screens, like that old
It's great.
old school computer effect, it's all exactly like that. So it's another game. Settings fucking beautiful. I'm sure the alien's great. I wouldn't know. Can't get to it. But it's something that I hated. I've appreciated it because everyone talks about how it's like a pretty good game. I appreciate it now, and I will love it when I play it. But when I first encountered it, didn't fucking like it.
That's great.
So there's some video games for you.
Great choice. Well, my last one is more of a nebulous concept. So, it's a lot of people aren't going to understand this when I say it. It's TV horror hosts.
Mm-hmm.
I hated these fucking people. Oh my God. I can't tell you how much I hated these people when I was a kid.
Are you talking about now? Are you going to talk about like local programming? Like,
So yeah, well, partially, right? So I'm going to talk about Elvira, Mistress of the Dark.
my dad liked her. I don't know why.
I don't know why either, but I feel like if I call him and write down these words, he's going
He'll
to
be like-
repeat these back to me. So, but it was her, and then it was, because I was in Cleveland, Ohio, it was Big Chuck and Little John. Okay, so here's the thing that I didn't know at the time that I was going to appreciate later. Mm-hmm. But this is specific to horror genre and maybe other genres. Like I would love other people to weigh in on their passions for other genres, but and how they relate. I don't know how they do, but for the horror genre particularly. So Big Chuck and Little John hosted a comedy / horror late night broadcast on TV.
Was it local? Because I don't.
It's totally local.
Okay.
It was one huge guy, one tiny guy, and they would do. They would launch the movie. They would have insane credits with an incredibly ridiculous cheesy ripoff of King Kong climbing like a building in Cleveland, but he was obviously like clay that was this high. and then they would play a movie and then they would do skits. Now, here's why. So I hated it at the time because at the time when I was a kid, I'm watching this at like 2 a.m. I'm not allowed to watch it. It's late. Like my TV's on in my room. Like, you know, I'm going to get in trouble if I'm caught. Like all I want to do is watch the movie I want to watch. And they would be like, oh, here, you know, we're going to play The Exorcist. I'm like, oh my God, I haven't seen The Exorcist. Play it. And then they would do 15 fucking minutes of them talking and doing a comedy skit and then like introing the commercial that was coming. And I was like, fuck you, move on. Like, show me the movie, right? But here's the interesting thing that happened. When it got to, you know, 2 a.m, you got kind of delirious and tired and sleepy. You've been up for 48 hours
right
straight.
into where they need you.
And then they would start doing comedy skits. But the comedy skits were aimed at a demographic of people who were like 40 years old or older. And I was 12. So I didn't get anything that was happening, right? They would do comedy skits that referenced like fucking vaudeville or some shit.
The economy.
like whatever. And I would be like, wait. And so I would be half asleep and I would be watching it and I would be like, no, don't go to sleep. Don't go to sleep. You got to finish this movie. And then I wake up and all of a sudden there'd be like these people running around going, ooh, pierogies, you know, pierogies are after you. And I was like, what? And I would go half asleep again. And it was like literally the best drugs you could do without doing drugs. Like I wasn't getting what they were doing and it was totally chaotic and it actually fit the experience. Like so
That's cool.
So they showed a movie that I've never ever challenged myself to watch again that scared the shit out of me at the time. And I'm going to say, although I'm not 100% sure this is true, that the name of this movie is The Fury. And in this movie, there's some kind of moment where there's like a scanner situation where someone like head blows up or something. And I had just watched them do like a 6-minute comedy skit on like dancing kielbasi, which I was like, I don't know what's happening right now. And then I was like, fuck it, I'm checking out, I'm going to sleep. And then I woke back up and they were showing this weird like scene from this movie. And something bad happened to one of the characters. And it is the worst scare I've ever gotten in my life because it was combined with what these hosts were doing. Right. So so there's something really cool about the horror genre that like welcomes in chaos. And these people were chaotic. And you don't like when you turn on Game of Thrones on HBO now, it is the most professional intro you'll ever hear, right? They're going to show you a 15-second clip of and then it's like, watch this. And they manipulate you every second away and everything is shiny and bright and perfectly placed. And then they go, and now the HBO series, Game of Thrones. And it segues perfectly in. Horror hosts were the opposite of that.
They're like, we're gonna.
They were like,
see if you have
we're
what
gonna.
It takes
Exactly. We're gonna joke about like something you have no idea what the fuck we're talking about, like for 2 minutes, and then it's gonna be totally trippy, and then like here's a horror movie. And it was better. It was better because it was chaos, right?
And they were knowing these public access people, like they're very passionate about whatever shitty film you've never seen before.
Totally.
So they are having the time of their lives, which is something that can't be replicated anymore.
And that was the great thing about Elvira was she made me mad because I felt like as someone who really liked horror, I felt like her bad puns and her comedy thing were undercutting everything that I was about to see.
Yeah.
Like if you make fun of like, oh, we're going to show you this crappy, like whatever, and then you show it, like, how am I going to enjoy this now? Like you just were literally like, this is a terrible movie. Now watch it. Right. But the great thing about Elvira was that she would make a really bad joke or pun, and then she'd show you a movie that was sort of bad, like Phantasm. And when they did a bad joke or pun, it wasn't as bad as hers, so it made them look better. right? Like, which I didn't get at the time. But there are horror movies that I watched later that I was like, wait, this movie is kind of not that great. But when I saw it in her format, like she would show a movie and then I watched a movie, I was like, the movie's great. But the reason the movie was great was because she was like, I understand what this is. I'm going to make worse jokes than them. I'm going to be campier and cornier than they are. And now here's Children of the Corn. And then she played Children of the Corn. And they would do something campy or whatever, but it was just scary because she took the camp out of it and took it to her own intro.
She's like a...
Now it's just scary because she... Like, right. It's like when you get bit by a snake and they suck out the poison.
Yeah.
She's like, this movie's got a little camp in it. Let me suck it out. It's all mine. Now enjoy the movie. Like, it was amazing. Like,
she's like the hype man for horror films.
it was crazy, incredible. So, like, it made me super angry at the time, but now I realize that it's something that, like, probably no one gets to experience anymore because I don't think there's such thing as like a horror host, right? Like,
not anymore. I mean, I know she's still like, from what I've seen, still does like the cons and stuff like that. Like she'll go
for
get
an
her.
audience of 4, but like,
Yeah.
right.
Which
It's
is
not a
kinda
thing. It's not a
sad.
cultural thing, right?
Yeah. There's no big.
No one comes on and rolls out like, here's the.
Yeah, there's no one.
Right.
I mean, maybe like the random thing would be like whoever's hosting like AMC's Fright Fest.
Yeah.
But that's a once a month thing.
Exactly.
Those people did it year fucking round.
Right. But that's as close as it gets. And whoever's doing that is not doing it the way Elvira did. And like, whatever,
No.
or- right.
Like I love Kevin Smith and he did it one year, but it wasn't like he was just doing like in the cool way where he's like, I'm a fan. Like I love AMC, you know, plug for Comic Book Man. Here's this show. I mean, I love him and it was great, but like Elvira and them, like they got into it. It almost reminds me of like when in Fright Night, because remember they get the fucking like
That's exactly what I was
they
thinking
get that
of.
guy to to come help him fight the vampires. Now there was a guy who my dad always mentioned. I don't know if he liked
Zachary?
him. No. Dr. Creep.
Oh, yes.
You know
Yes,
Dr. Creep?
Of course.
Yeah, that was the guy that
Yeah.
that he's the only one that I could think of because he was like an Ohio. He was like an Ohio guy. I think it says he's from Middletown. But I remember my dad. Whenever we mentioned horror, like he would always be like he'd always say something about Dr. Creep.
Right.
And that was like I think maybe it sounds like that's like a Midwest thing. Like you have your public access horror host.
Yeah, but
guy.
it wasn't. See, that's the weird thing is that everyone had their version of it. Like Elvira was out of California first, right? She was Los Angeles market first, I think. So it was. But that's the thing. It was like what people realized was, and this is not like, I mean, this is not like a hidden knowledge because the Universal horror films went from Frankenstein, Dracula, we're going to have nurses in theaters in case you pass out from fright, to Abbott and Costello versus Frankenstein. Let's play dodgeball with the devil.
Yeah.
Like, right. So, but I mean, it went from horrible to funny.
Yeah.
But what happened was the horror host took it from funny to horrible.
Yeah. They were horror hosts.
Right. They reversed it. Like they took it back to where it was supposed to go. Like they were like, we're the ones who are going to do the camp. So when you get to the horror movie, when they do camp, it's not going to be as bad as what we did, which means enjoy just getting the shit scared out of you. Right. Again. Right. So, but that format is dead, right? Because now you can just individually tap into, I'm going to order from Amazon Video. I'm going to Netflix
Well, the
and
other
chill.
thing
I'm going to
is
do like whatever.
the fun aspect of it being on public access back in the day. One, you didn't know the fucking schedule. If they did anymore,
Exactly.
Because I remember you'd have to like randomly stumble upon it, which was the greatest fucking moment. Like when you realize you hit it. But now if people do it, it's on YouTube.
Right.
So the magic of it's kind of gone. Like the closest I can only think of, and I love this guy so much, but the Cinemassacre. He's the closest thing to that. He doesn't have like a shtick like they do. He's not like a vampire or a queen of
No,
mistress
but
of the
that's
dark.
still in the spirit of
It is, and I think he still embodies that. Like he loves what he fucking does, and he can tell you about these films and educate you about it. And because I think that was his whole thing was like to educate people about these films.
And that's why Shudder is really clever with their Shudder Live TV because, like, when you can go into Shudder and you can be like, you can search it by any, like, I'm going to do collections, I'm going to do A to Z, I'm going to do like genre, like whatever. But the thing the thing that when you load up Shudder, the first thing you see is Shudder Live TV, and they're randomly showing you something.
So it gives you that same feel of
right.
like,
This
hey,
is
I
just on
stumbled.
right now. Right. Exactly. Which is right. That's the thing. Like that's, I mean, it's not host driven and it's not like whatever, but it's still in the spirit of, what we're talking about. So that, there's going to be another version of that, like whatever the next technology is.
It'll somehow
is going to have some other, manifestation of what that is, but
and we're ready for it.
and we're ready for it. But to me, the point was, when you're young, you're in a hurry. When I was young, I was like, I've heard The Shining is 2.5 hours long. It's 1:30 in the morning. I got to get up for school at 7 a.m.
Yeah.
Like, I don't have this kind of time to watch you do a comedy skit for 8 minutes before you show me
it.
The Shining, right? And I didn't realize at the time that the framework of what they were doing was, we're going to give you mad sort of comic chaos that makes everything feel out of control.
Yeah.
So when you go into the movie, you're already kind of primed for the world's a little bit out of control. So when the next out of control horror scene happens, you're like, oh my God, what the fuck?
You're ready for it.
Right. What the fuck is happening? Everything's out of control.
It doesn't take you out of the moment. Oh, I miss those now. Now I'm like real fucking like missing it. That's a good one to end on. I'm sure everyone has their public access TV memories. So there we go. Those are some things that we didn't like when we first saw it, and now we love it, and now I'm thinking I miss it, which is kind of sad. It's ending like the others.
So let us know what you hated when you saw it, and now you love it.
And now you love it. And if you have a great X-Files episode,
oh yeah, send them to Nick.
Send them to me.
Nicky Roll.
Yeah. Let me know, man. There's some more I got to hit up. So, anyways, till next time. It's been Hollow Weekly.